Is the West ready to compete in a world where it no longer sets the economic rules? Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Commute Commentary, where we look past the narrative to cut through regional bias. Today, we are diving into a major disruption in global financial gravity, where India has officially pulled ahead of the U.S. in growth share. And, right now, we are seeing vital global shipping lanes facing these just unprecedented disruptions.
Right.
Energy prices are incredibly volatile, but at the same time, we have this one massive economy quietly engineering a historic boom.
Yeah, from the inside out, essentially.
Exactly. So today, for you listening on your commute, we're looking at a huge stack of recent multilateral macroeconomic outlooks. And honestly, they point to a reality that I think a lot of people just aren't ready for.
It's an absolute paradigm shift, because if you look at the broad consensus among geopolitical analysts right now, there's this overarching assumption that global growth is just stalling out everywhere, because of high interest rates and regional conflicts.
Right, everyone's pumping the brakes.
Exactly. But the data from these international financial reports tell a completely different story. It shows that the engine of the global economy hasn't actually stalled out. It has just relocated.
Okay, let's unpack this right away.
Yeah.
Because the numbers for the 2026 projections, they were just staggering.
They really are.
According to these multilateral reports, when we look at who is actually driving the world's real GDP growth this year, China is projected to contribute 26.6% to global expansion. India is sitting right at 17%. And the United States is trailing behind them at 9.9%.
Right.
So together, India and China account for nearly 44% of all global economic expansion.
Massive.
It is. But wait, I need to stop you before we go any further, because I can literally hear people yelling at their dashboards right now.
Oh, sure.
Because, look, the U.S. economy is roughly $28 trillion, right? And India's economy is much smaller. It's closer to $4 trillion. So how on earth is a $4 trillion economy contributing almost double what a $28 trillion economy is contributing to global growth?
No.
I mean, walk me through the math here.
Yeah, it's a crucial distinction, and it trips people up all the time.
Okay.
We are talking specifically about the contribution to global growth, right? Not the absolute total size of the economy.
Right, okay.
Think of the global economy as a forest. The U.S. is a massive, centuries-old oak tree. Because it's already so huge, it only grows, a few new branches every year.
Yeah, but it's still the biggest tree in the forest by far.
Exactly. India, on the other hand, is a younger, rapidly expanding tree. It might be smaller in total mass right now, but it is doubling its branches and its canopy right before our eyes.
Oh, I see.
Growth contribution measures how much a specific country adds to the new economic activity generated worldwide in a given year.
Right. So, if I have a $100 billion legacy corporation growing at 1% and you have a mid-sized startup growing at 20%, you might actually be hiring more net new people and signing more net new contracts than I am, even though my bank account is technically bigger.
Precisely. It combines a country's economic baseline with its current speed of expansion.
Got it.
And to clarify another technical term you used earlier, real GDP growth. That just means these numbers are adjusted for inflation.
That's not fake growth.
Right. This isn't a mirage created by prices going up. This is a measurement of actual, tangible, new goods being produced and new services being rendered.
Which brings us to the speed of that expansion. The reports show India's economy grew at an estimated 7.3% for the 2025 to 2026 fiscal year. And they're projecting that to moderate slightly to 6.4% in 2026 and 2027. But even with that moderation, it remains the fastest growing major economy in the world.
By a wide margin.
Right. Meanwhile, global growth overall is slowing down to a rather sluggish 3%. So the whole world is basically pumping the brakes, and this one engine is running red hot.
And, that divergence is really what makes this moment so historically significant. For the last 50 years, the general rule of thumb in international finance was, if the U.S. economy catches a cold, the rest of the world sneezes.
Right, the whole system relied on the U.S.
The entire global system was completely dependent on Western consumer demand.
Exactly. And the big aha moment from these 2026 projections is that the U.S. can now catch a cold, and these emerging markets have somehow built their own immune system.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But how? Because usually when we look back at history and see an Asian economy explode onto the scene like this, I'm thinking of the Asian tigers in the 80s or China in the early 2000s, it's almost entirely an export-driven boom. They manufacture cheap physical goods and sell them to Western consumers. But the analysts we are reviewing today say, That is emphatically not the case here. So how does an economy grow this fast from the inside out?
Well, it is a fundamentally different blueprint. It's a homegrown engine. The reports actually point to 4 distinct internal forces driving this phenomenon. And these forces effectively insulate it from the global trade slowdowns you just mentioned.
Walk us through them.
The first force is demographics. Over 65% of India's population is under the age of 35.
But hold on, I have to push back there. Having a massive young population isn't automatically a win, right?
Well, no, of course not.
We've seen plenty of historical examples where a youth bulge just leads to massive unemployment, stagnant wages, severe social unrest. Basically because there aren't enough jobs to go around. It's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
So how is it a dividend in this specific case?
That is exactly the right question to ask. And it brings us directly to the second and third forces. Because demographics alone are just raw potential.
Right.
To turn that youth bulge into a real dividend, you need a mechanism to capture all that energy. So the second force is their entrepreneurial sector. India hasn't just relied on legacy corporations or government jobs to employ these young people.
Okay, what are they doing instead?
They have built the 3rd largest startup ecosystem globally.
Wow, really? The 3rd largest?
Yeah. It is a fundamental cultural shift towards building new domestic businesses from the ground up to solve local problems.
And they are building these businesses on top of the third force, which is the digital infrastructure. And I really want to spend some time on this because it blew my mind when I was reading the source materials.
Oh, it's incredible. Yes, their digital public infrastructure, specifically systems like UPI, the Unified Payments Interface.
Right.
It is arguably the most efficient in the world right now. It allows for instant, near-zero cost digital transactions for hundreds of millions of people.
We really need to put this into real-world terms because I think it's hard to conceptualize if you're just used to traditional Western banking.
Right, we're so used to fees.
Exactly. Like if I want to send you 50 cents through a traditional legacy bank, there might be a $3 wire fee or a merchant processing fee that entirely wipes out the value of the transaction. The friction is just too high.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
But with UPI, imagine a street vendor selling a cup of tea for the equivalent of a few pennies. They can accept a digital payment instantly via QR code, with basically zero transaction fee eating into their microscopic profit margin.
And the macroeconomic mechanism at play there is something called the velocity of money.
Okay, what does that mean?
When people operate in a strictly cash-based, informal economy, money moves slowly. It sits in a cash register or under a mattress.
Right.
But the moment you digitize those microtransactions and remove all that friction, a single 10 rupee note doesn't just change hands twice a day. It changes hands 50 times a day.
Because it's instant.
Instantly. It moves from the tea vendor to the grocer to the supplier instantly.
So it essentially brings the entire informal, untracked economy into the formal, measurable sector overnight.
Exactly.
That alone would cause a massive spike in GDP metrics, just because economic activity that was previously invisible is suddenly being counted on a digital ledger.
Absolutely. And that digital empowerment feeds perfectly into the 4th internal driver, which is rising aspirations and domestic demand.
The middle class.
Yes. You have a rapidly expanding middle class that is suddenly digitally connected and upwardly mobile. They are demanding better homes, better healthcare, better education, and consumer goods.
Makes sense.
When you synthesize these 4 forces, the youth, the startup job creation, the high-velocity digital rails, and the rising domestic demand, you get the core mechanism of this entire segment.
Right.
Because this growth is anchored tightly in private domestic consumption, paired with heavy public infrastructure spending by the government, it acts as a massive shock absorber. If the West buys fewer exports, this internal engine just keeps firing.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because as much as this homegrown immune system is firing, no country operates in a vacuum.
Right.
I want to pivot and look at the rest of the world. Because if these emerging markets are somewhat insulated, what about everyone else? What are the headwinds and tailwinds shaping this environment right now?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the global economy right now feels like an operating system that is simultaneously trying to install a massive upgrade while fighting off a severe malware virus.
I like that analogy.
Oh.
Let's break down the malware first. What is dragging the system down?
The primary drag is severe geopolitical friction. Specifically, the multilateral reports highlight the cascading effects of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran.
Oh, right.
This conflict has caused a massive energy shock. When vital shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz face severe disruptions, the physical cost of moving oil and gas just skyrockets.
And energy is the bedrock of everything.
Exactly. It's the bedrock of the physical economy. So when energy prices spike, everything else gets more expensive.
Which feeds into inflation.
Yep. Because of these specific disruptions, global inflation projections for 2026 have actually been revised upward from 4.1% to 4.7%.
Which is just a nightmare scenario for central banks in the West. Because, I mean, they have spent the last few years aggressively hiking interest rates to crush inflation.
Trying to, at least.
Right. And just when they thought they had it under control, a geopolitical energy shock forces prices right back up.
Yeah.
So that's the malware eating up the battery power. What is the software upgrade?
The upgrade is the artificial intelligence investment boom. This is the massive tailwind pulling in the exact opposite direction.
Okay.
Economies that are deeply integrated into the global technology value chain are seeing their economic activity lifted dramatically, even if they are heavily reliant on imported, expensive energy.
Do you know what the U.S. share of global GDP actually was 50 years ago? If you know the answer, drop it in the comments below. We'll be pinning the best explanation because people are absolutely noticing these shifting shares and it's causing a lot of public friction.
Yeah.
But going back to AI, how does that actually work in practice? How do data centers and algorithms offset the soaring cost of physical oil and shipping logistics?
It really comes down to productivity gains and software margins. Physical goods require fuel to manufacture and transport. Software and AI algorithms require electricity, yes, but their deployment is near instantaneous and infinitely scalable.
Right, there's no shipping container for an algorithm.
Exactly. The sheer volume of global capital flowing into AI hardware, data centers, and enterprise tech integration is creating so much new, high-margin economic value that it is literally keeping the broader global economy afloat.
Wow.
It is entirely offsetting the financial drag created by the conflicts in the Middle East.
It's wild to think about. You have massive container ships rerouting around entire continents, driving up the cost of everyday physical goods. And at the same time, invisible algorithms are generating so much value in the background that it just balances the global spreadsheet.
It's a bizarre contrast.
It really shows how much the nature of value has changed in our lifetimes. But, people are noticing this shift.
Oh, absolutely. When the center of economic gravity shifts this rapidly from west to east, it inevitably creates polarized reactions on the global stage. We are seeing real-time responses to these exact growth contribution numbers.
Yeah, we saw Elon Musk actually share these exact projections online, stating flat out that the balance of power is changing.
Right.
And this isn't just internet commentary from tech CEOs. This anxiety is manifesting in very real, very aggressive trade policies.
Yes, definitely.
For example, we are seeing steep tariffs proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump targeting countries like China and India specifically. And the idea is to protect American industries from being hollowed out by these shifting dynamics. And some geopolitical analysts are claiming that these tariffs are essentially biting back on the U.S. economy, basically raising costs for American consumers without actually stopping the shift in global gravity.
That is their specific perspective. We do not endorse or validate that stance.
Absolutely. We're just looking at the crossfire, as reported by these analysts. But it highlights the tension beautifully. The old rules of global trade are being aggressively rewritten.
They are.
So what does this all mean for the players on the board? Let's take a step back. I want to look at this strictly from the different regional perspectives outlined in the data. We've talked about the math. Now let's talk about the mindset. How is Indian leadership actually viewing their own rise?
Well, based on the reports, their leadership is taking a highly pragmatic, almost utilitarian approach. Their finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, has openly acknowledged that China still holds a significant lead in total global growth contribution.
So they aren't ignoring the reality.
Not at all. There is no denial of the math. But she also expressed a very clear, methodical commitment to bridge that gap. The strategy there isn't just to rely on cheap labor, but to aggressively deploy technology to maximize the skills of their workforce and drive productivity.
And what about their foreign policy angle? Because, as we know, economic gravity usually translates to diplomatic leverage.
That is where their external affairs minister, S. Shankar, comes in. He frames India's growth not just as a domestic triumph, but as a utility for the rest of the world.
A utility? How so?
From their view, by growing internally and creating a massive, stable domestic market, India is helping to de-risk the international economy.
Ah, right. So they're essentially saying to Western companies, look, global supply chains are a mess, geopolitical tensions are high, Come anchor your business in our massive insulated domestic market.
Exactly.
They are presenting themselves as the reliable anchor in a stormy sea. But let's cross the ocean. What is the view from the US and Europe? Because they're definitely not just standing still, even if their growth percentages look smaller in comparison.
The Western perspective is one of navigating very complex, very difficult transitions. The U.S. is holding relatively steady, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the reports project their real GDP growth at 2.3% for 2026. Their entire strategic perspective is anchored in being the primary driver of that AI technology boom we just discussed. That is their absolute strategic advantage, and they are leveraging it to stay competitive. However, across the Atlantic, the euro area is facing a brutal landscape.
Yeah, the data shows European growth is projected at a completely sluggish 0.9% for 2026. Why is there such a massive gap between the US and Europe?
It comes back to that malware virus we discussed earlier, the energy shock.
Right, the conflict.
European economies are highly exposed to the energy disruptions stemming from the Middle East conflict. They do not have the domestic energy independence that the U.S. enjoys.
Right, the US produces a lot of its own energy.
Exactly. And Europe is struggling deeply to navigate the fragmentation of global trade. So from the Western perspective overall, the daily reality is managing sticky inflation, attempting to secure tech dominance, and weathering severe geopolitical storms.
But wait, if Europe is struggling with energy shocks, how is China, which also imports massive amounts of foreign energy, still projected to contribute a whopping 26.6% to global growth? I don't quite understand their perspective. We hear constantly about how China's economy is slowing down, how the real estate market is in crisis, and yet they are still the largest overall contributor to global expansion. How does that square?
It seems like a contradiction until you look at the mechanics of their economy. The international reports describe China's situation as a deeply entrenched K-shaped recovery.
Okay, stop there for a second. We hear K-shaped thrown around on financial news all the time. Give me a visual of what that actually feels like on the ground in China.
Imagine the letter K. One line goes down, the other line goes up. The downward line represents their traditional domestic economy.
Okay.
Consumer spending is very soft, and their colossal property sector, which used to be the main driver of their wealth, is facing severe, well-documented structural challenges. Everyday citizens are feeling that downward slope.
Right, so what's the upward slope?
The upward arm of the K is surging so powerfully that it carries the aggregate numbers higher.
And what is driving that upward arm?
They are completely buoying their overall growth to a projected 4.6% in 2026 through massive state-backed innovations in artificial intelligence, heavily fortified supply chains, and a relentless surge in high-tech manufacturing exports. They aren't just exporting cheap plastic toys anymore, they are dominating in AI hardware, electric vehicles, and green energy technology.
I hear what you're saying about them transitioning up the value chain, but is anyone actually buying it? I mean, if the US and Europe are throwing up massive tariffs on Chinese EVs and solar panels, where are these exports actually going?
They are rapidly pivoting their export markets toward the global south, deepening ties within BRICS nations, and establishing complex supply chains that bypass traditional Western bottlenecks.
That's fascinating.
From their perspective, they are successfully restructuring their economy for the future, even if the domestic transition is incredibly bumpy for their citizens.
It's like they've accepted the sluggishness in real estate and traditional consumer spending as a sunk cost, and just entirely doubled down on exporting the future AI, EVs, and green tech.
Precisely. And this raises a profound structural question about the future of international finance. How does a multipolar economic world actually operate day to day when the primary engines of new growth are no longer anchored in the West?
That's the million-dollar question.
For over half a century, the global financial system, the institutions, the currency standards, they were all built entirely around Western consumption and Western capital. Now, with nearly half of all new global economic expansion coming strictly from India and China, the gravitational pull has fundamentally shifted east.
It is a massive structural reality to wrap your head around. And honestly, looking through all these reports, the one thing that is absolutely clear is that the future of this shift is incredibly fluid. It depends on so many unpredictable variables.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't know how long the conflict in the Middle East will last, or how high it might eventually push global energy prices. We don't know what the actual productivity ceiling of this AI boom is. Will it continue to offset the drags on the physical economy, or are we looking at a tech bubble waiting to pop?
Exactly. The data tells us what is happening right now and how these emerging mechanisms are working. But where it ultimately leads is a chapter that hasn't been written yet. It challenges every single assumption we have about global economic hierarchy and resilience. There are no definitive winners yet, just a rapidly evolving landscape that requires a totally new map to navigate.
Do you think Washington can win back its spot at the absolute center of the economic order? Share your views on this in the comment section. And that wraps up our discussion for today. Browse our show for more global insights, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next shift. See you next time on the Commute Commentary.